It's time for the grand finale of the preseason. Let's do it.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team that's in our hearts. We've got love that won't depart. We are always in the stands, 'cause we're super Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Brain, if there's a little bit of extra pep in my step, a little bit of bounce in my voice, it's because we've only got one more fake football game left, standing between us and real, actual NFL football. I'm getting fired up.
Yeah. Well, and then you got that whole other week where you don't have a game. But
Yes,
yeah,
I know.
only one more fake game, though.
But I'm excited. I'm fired up. I'm really, really excited for actual football. Aren't you?
I want to be, but this team, every day the news is just makes me less and less excited. It's like I want to be excited, but I don't know.
If there's one thing that I've learned in recent years, it's never watch the news.
Well, that's fair. That's very, very fair.
Doesn't matter if it's about the Dolphins or anybody else. Never watch the news.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Whether it's about the Dolphins, whether it's about the country, you'll
Whether
just
it's about
get
the
the
city, whether it's about whatever. I don't want to watch any news. I don't want any news. All I want to do is football.
Yeah, well, I mean, yep. So we're going to have football. Whether it's going to be good football or bad football, that remains to be seen. But there will be football. That is a guarantee.
Yes, there will be football, and we are going to talk about it. In fact, on today's show, we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins. We will talk about some news about the Miami Dolphins. We're going to look ahead to the final preseason game of the season, what we can expect from Dolphins Jags. It sounds like we're going to get most of the starters, at least getting a little bit of action in that game. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about maybe some speculation around the 53-man roster and what we might be expecting there. We're not going to make full roster predictions today, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And so we're going to talk about some Miami Dolphins football, and it's getting exciting because it's almost time. But before we get into all of that, a reminder to you, if you're not doing so already, to make sure that you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you get your podcast. Leave us that 5-star rating. Leave us a positive review. It really does help new people find the show, especially as we're getting into the new season. We want new people to find the show. It's a good time. Additionally, make sure you are subscribed to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Smash the thumbs up button on this video if you're watching us live. If you're not watching us live, smash the thumbs up button anyway. Do what you got to do. Help us out. We appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you're notified every time that we go live. And make sure that you are visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And of course, every episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show is sponsored by Caneswear, Caneswear.com. That is the spot Miami fans shop, whether you're shopping online or you're shopping in person in South Florida. Whatever the case may be, Caneswear is the place to go to for your Miami Dolphins gear. And of course, they also have Miami Marlins, Florida Panthers, Miami Heat, Miami Hurricanes, Florida Gators, Seminoles, whatever it is that you're looking for. Maybe they don't have Gators and Seminoles. It is the Caneswear after all. But make sure you're heading to Caneswear.com. It is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. Let's get into it, Bryn. Before we start looking ahead to the game, we got to talk about some more injuries that the Dolphins are currently dealing with from today's practice. Now, we don't know the extent of the injuries, but we know that Jordyn Brooks suffered what appeared to be a lower body injury today, as did Jaylen Wright. And if you take Mr. Omar Kelly at his word, he seemed to suggest that the injury to Jaylen Wright, Ollie Gordon, because Devon Achane is dealing with a calf injury, and so they probably want to take their time with that. So then you're going to have Ollie Gordon and Aaron Schlampkin and Mike Boone. Is that the running back room? The running back room was a position of strength before, and suddenly not so much.
Yeah. Look, the primary concern here is Devon Achane, because it's really Devon Achane and just a bunch of guys. But if
that is Ollie Gordon slander, and I will not hear it.
No, I mean, look, Ollie Gordon's a 6th-round rookie. He's looked good in preseason. There are the waiver wire is littered with guys who have looked good in the preseason. The office buildings across America are littered with guys who were really good in the preseason and never really amounted to much of anything in the NFL. So look, Ollie Gordon, I've liked what I've seen, but I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit on like Ollie Gordon is going to just come in and set the world on fire. And I think the biggest evidence of that is the fact that the Dolphins are being linked to potentially trading for Brian Robinson Jr. Can
we talk about that?
What? What'd you say?
Can we talk about this Brian Robinson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we talk about Brian Robinson?
Well, do you want to talk about Brian Robinson specifically, or do you want to just talk about why the Dolphins are potentially looking to trade him?
Well, listen, when your running back room is getting injured, and it's getting beat up, it changes the picture. But like my thoughts on when I first heard the rumor, and actually, to be fair, I was on another Discord server that I spent some time on, and somebody mentioned being worried that because they are really high on Ollie Gordon's fantasy value potentially as a late round sleeper pick, but he was worried that the Dolphins might go out and trade for Brian Robinson, which would absolutely tank Ollie Gordon's fantasy value. And I said I wouldn't be worried about the Dolphins trading for Brian Robinson because to me, Brian Robinson is going to be traded from the Commanders because they don't want to give him a new contract. So this is a guy who's looking for a new contract. Dolphins aren't going to bring him in and give him a new contract. The Dolphins are not in a position to give anybody a new contract right now. That's not something that they're looking to do, least of all a running back from another team. And then the other thought that I had was, why would they why would they give away draft capital to bring in a rental running back for one season? The Dolphins are not a Brian Robinson away from threatening for the Super Bowl. Spoiler alert for the show that we're going to do next week, where we talk about the possibilities for this Dolphins season. The Dolphins are not Brian Robinson away from being a Super Bowl contender. So I don't understand the idea behind trading away draft capital to bring in a rental running back for the length of the season when you could, you've got Mike Boone and you got Aaron Schlampkin. You don't need anybody else.
Well, I mean, that's a joke. Were you weren't serious about that? That was a joke. But look, first off, if Devon Achane is hurt, your running back room is Jaylen Wright, Ollie Gordon, and Aaron Schlampkin. Sorry. I mean, I can't even say his name.
Schlampkin is what I've been going with. I know it's actually
Schlampkin. Yeah.
But Schlampkin is much funnier.
Yeah. So look, Mike McDaniel's already made reference to it in one press conference about when people were talking about Ollie Gordon, and Ollie Gordon, where Mike McDaniel wants to see him improve is without the ball in his hands. And what he's talking about is pass protection.
Correct.
The fact that now here, I'm not sure on the timeline of this. The news broke today that the Dolphins it was this morning that the Dolphins were potentially interested and they were linked to being the front runners to trade for Brian Robinson Jr. And then also this morning,
it shouldn't. I don't want to classify it as news breaking. It's a rumor.
Okay, it's a rumor. It's that rumor happened, and also this morning, Jaylen Wright got hurt at joint practice. I don't know what happened first. If the Jaylen Wright injury happened first, well then, yeah, the Dolphins absolutely needed to go out and get, they need to be proactive to get a running back that can come in, that they feel confident can do the job. And I don't just mean running the football. I mean doing the entire job. Because last year, Jaylen Wright could barely get on the field. And most of the plays that he was on the field were running plays because presumably they couldn't trust him to protect the passer. Ollie Gordon, it's already been talked about. They want to see him improve without the ball in his hands. What does that mean? That means pass protection. Even if we're talking about Devon Achane being healthy, Devon Achane is not known for being a blocker. And if anything, on passing downs, he's going to be out running routes. So you need a running back that can not just run the football, but that can also be a blocker on passing downs. And if they were sniffing it out before Jaylen Wright got hurt, well, then that also tells me that they think this is an upgrade over what they have in the room. And I'm not necessarily in disagreement with them. Brian Robinson Jr. has a 3-year sample size of being an NFL caliber running back, a fringe starting running back. I can't say the same for Jaylen Wright or Ollie Gordon. And as far as trading for him, I'm not saying you're going to give up a top 100 pick for him. I'm not even saying you're going to give up a 4th round pick for him. But like a 5th, a 6th round pick for a running back that's going to come in and stabilize your room.
So you're okay. Let me just so that we're clear here. You're okay with trading away a 5th round pick for 1 year of a rental running back in a season that is, in all likelihood, just a season that's just kind of there.
I'd be angling for a 6th. I'd be angling to give up a 6. Okay. If it came down to it, and I was like, I'm not sold that Devon Achane is going to be healthy week 1. Jaylen Wright is going to get hurt, and I don't think Ollie Gordon can protect the quarterback. I know that we don't have high expectations for the season, but I think that there's a chance that the team could be good. And so I think that they can't just completely sabotage the season.
Of course.
So you're suggesting because they want to haggle over a 5th round pick versus a 6th round pick for a running back that would stabilize the room. And I'm not sitting here and saying that Brian Robinson Jr. would be the difference between this being a good season or a bad season. I'm just saying that a 5th or 6th round pick is not huge draft capital for a player that would definitively make your roster better.
What you're suggesting is it is worth a 5th or 6th round pick because Brian Robinson could be the difference between your starting quarterback being on the field for the full season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, that's like at the end of the day, that is the most important. We could talk ad nauseum about the offensive line, about the running backs, about the tight ends, the wide receivers, about the secondary, about the linebackers, about the edge rushers, and the health of all these different positions. At the end of the day, this season has no chance of being a good season if Tua Tagovailoa is not healthy for the vast majority of it. So having a player that can help keep him upright, I think is pretty damn important.
Yeah, I suppose that's accurate. All right. Well, then let's move on. So we've talked about the Brian Robinson thing. We've also now got injuries to Jordyn Brooks. But I think one of the other things, and I know you talked about this on the Dolphins Talk Extra show that you did on Monday night, with Mike, but you talked about the Dolphins bringing in Matthew Judon. And you talked about him coming in to provide a little bit of depth in that defensive front. And we know that there are concerns with potentially, where is Jaylen Phillips? What are you getting out of Bradley Chubb? Are you bringing in Judon because you're worried about those things? Or are you bringing in Judon just to get a little bit of depth because you expect to lose one of those? Are you bringing in Judon because you expect to trade him? Regardless, he strengthens that area. And then you have Jordyn Brooks, who is one of your leaders defensively, go down today with an injury. Again, we don't know the severity of the injury at this point, but what is the addition of Judon and potentially the absence of Jordyn Brooks do to this defense?
Look, I'm going to take them at their word when it comes to Judon. I don't think that they're planning on bringing in Judon so that they could trade Bradley Chubb or Jaylen Phillips. I don't think it makes sense to trade Jaylen Phillips, because what you get for Jaylen Phillips at this point isn't worth trading him for. And to me, Jaylen Phillips is either going to have a great year and we're going to either be talking contract extension or franchise tag and then try to trade him when his value is at the highest, or he's going to get hurt and have a down year, and then it's, and then it's going to be a moot point, because you're either going to bring him back at a really cheap deal or you're just going to let him walk. And if he gets picked up, you might be looking at a comp pick. And so it's like what are you going to trade? Like, anybody that's saying, well, we should trade Jaylen Phillips for whatever we can get for him because we're not going to sign him long term because he's too much of an injury risk. While I get the idea, you've got to get you got to get at the very least a third round pick to justify that. And I'm not giving up a third round pick for a guy who has shown, when healthy, he can be a very close to elite edge rusher and one of the best defensive players on your team, and does everything right in the locker room and off the field, and is everything that you would want to build, not to mention the fact that he's a hometown guy. Like I'm not trading Jaylen Phillips for nothing. Like, if Jaylen Phillips has a great year and then we want to have the conversation in the off season about whether or not it's worth extending him because of his injury risk, then I would say, all right, well, then this is a guy that would make a lot of sense to franchise, and then we could shop him around and see what we can get for him. And if not, we could play him on the franchise tag, because while I get that's not ideal, and that's like $25 million or whatever for an edge rusher. A couple of years ago, we were talking about potentially franchising, Tua Tagovailoa, talking about potentially franchising Christian Wilkins. We could potentially franchise Jaylen Phillips, especially if we're going to be getting rid of Bradley Chubb and we're getting rid of Tyreek Hill, and we're shedding off all this money. Like, if it came down to it, we could franchise Jaylen Phillips if we needed to. So I'm not just pulling the plug on Jaylen Phillips because I don't have high hopes on this season and just trading him for a bag of peanuts. I'm also not doing the same thing with Bradley Chubb, and I'm certainly not doing that with Chop Robinson. So I'm just going to take them at their word that this is a move that tells me that they're trying to win. And they're looking at it and they're saying, well, we could go out there and we could sign another garbage cornerback off the scrap heap, but it's really not going to make our defense any better because it's just going to be another guy to add to the pile and on the scrap heap that we have in the secondary already. Well, why don't we just improve our edge rush and our pass rush, and that will make things a little bit easier for the secondary and potentially mitigate some of the problems there. They're not going to fix it. It's going to be a sore spot. It's going to be an Achilles heel for this team, but how do you mitigate it? I think you mitigate it by having more pass rush. I think it's a good move. It makes the room better. And I think it's, again, evidence of, while this team maybe not they're not obviously going all in on this season. They've clearly taken a cautious approach, a fiscally responsible approach to, kind of clean their books up and sort of reset things. But I think they're still trying to be competitive in whatever way they can. And I think that's what this move is about.
Excellent. All right. So let's then look at this roster as a whole. Before we start to look ahead to this preseason game, let's take a look at the roster as a whole. We talked about the idea that 53-man roster cut down is coming. We're going to make our final predictions for the 53 on Monday's show. But let's do some speculating. Where do you think the key battles are? I mean, honestly, I think the running back situation really opens the door to a lot of really interesting possibilities, because where Devon Achane is in terms of his status and where Jaylen Wright is in terms of his status is going to play, I think, a key role in deciding how the Dolphins move forward with this 53-man roster. And again, same thing with Jordyn Brooks, assuming that it's not a serious injury. I think let's start with the injuries, because I think that's where the biggest question marks are at this point. Like, where is Andrew Meyer, which was the guy that it sounded like at the beginning of camp, this was the guy who was going to be the backup center. And now we don't know what his status is. Same thing with Liam Eichenberg. We know that Eichenberg is hurt, but we don't know what his status is. Is he close? Is he going to be in the mix for this offensive line? Again, and we, as I mentioned, Achane, Wright. Where is Jordyn Brooks? Where is Austin Jackson? What is his status? We know that it sounded like it wasn't going to be that bad, but where are those injuries, and how does that color what the decisions are on the roster? Because I think that it opens the door for perhaps somebody that was not on the radar previously to make the 53-man roster, at least the initial 53-man roster, in the running back room or on the offensive line.
I think it's not just limited to those positions. I think it's in multiple position rooms. And look, you get 2 extra spots for IR designated to return. That means you can technically keep 55 guys if you have 2 guys that are on the IR designated to return. But that's it. That means if you have other guys that are injured, you can't just stash them on the IR without them taking up a roster spot. So you basically have to put them on the roster spot, or put them on the roster, and that means cutting somebody else, or you have to potentially cut them. Or maybe I think you might be able to put them on the PUP. I'm not 100% sure on that. You might be able to put them on the PUP. And if you put them on the PUP, then I think they miss like the first 4 games of the season. So that's kind of another tricky way around it. But it's specifically on the offensive line. I mean, I'm not worried about Austin Jackson because they don't seem worried about Austin Jackson at all. All the news about that is just Austin Jackson's going to be ready for week 1. I think, look, knock on wood, but right now the starting 5 looks to be healthy. They seem pretty confident that Patrick Paul, James Daniels, Aaron Brewer, Jonas Savainea, and Austin Jackson are all going to be healthy. Larry Borum is your 6th offensive lineman. Don't feel crazy about it, but it is what it is. And then you've got, 3 really interior utility offensive linemen. And 2 of the 3 are hurt, which is Liam Eichenberg, Andrew Meyer, and then Daniel Brunskill. Brunskill seems to have a leg up just because he's healthy and he's out there, and you can see him and that he's out there and he can play. So I tend to think that he's probably going to end up making the roster. Then you've got Keon Smith, who has been kind of shaky in pass pro, but if he's going to be your 4th tackle, he's done some things in the running game. He's shown flashes. Does he end up making the roster spot if you end up being able to stash 1 or 2 of those other guys? I don't know. It becomes a very interesting conversation. But outside of those guys, like when you start talking about Braden Daniels, like I don't feel great about that. Like if you end up having to stash 2 of these guys on IR, then yeah, I suppose then maybe a guy like Braden Daniels gets in as like your 8th offensive lineman because you're you need another guy that can play guard in case somebody goes down, but it's not great. At running back, I don't think Devon Achane is going to start the season on any sort of IR, but the question is he going to be ready for week 1? Jaylen Wright, I don't know what this injury is, so we have to wait and see. If Jaylen Wright is somebody that, like, they're not going to cut, so like if he's going to be on the IR, that would certainly open up another roster spot. Is that a roster spot for Brian Robinson Jr.? Is it a roster spot for Aaron Shamplin? Is it a roster spot for some other running back that might get cut by another team? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's it's certainly concerning right now, just looking at what this team is doing in terms of injuries. It makes you worry. This was already a team that did not have a lot of depth in a lot of places, and it's already being tested very early. Looking on the defensive side of the ball, where do you think the key battles are? For me, I think the interesting spot is the secondary and trying to figure out who is going to make it on the tail end of the secondary and who are going to be the guys that are going to make it in, who are the guys that are going to make it at the depth pieces on that front seven. In the secondary, there seems to be a lot of buzz coming out of camp, at least this week, that Jason Marshall Jr. might be the guy starting at your nickel cornerback position, which is interesting because it sounded like for a while that was Mike Hilton's job to lose, and now maybe he's lost it.
I'm intrigued what's going on there because when Mike Hilton was first signed, he wasn't immediately being used as like the first team nickel corner. It was Cornell Armstrong. Cornell Armstrong was a disaster this past week against the Lions. And that is what, that's what ultimately led to Jason Marshall getting the opportunity. And the quote that I think came from Anthony Weaver was, well, we know who Mike Hilton is. And so we want to see the young guys. That's why Mike Hilton's not playing as many snaps as Jason Marshall, as Cornell Armstrong, and as some of these younger corners. Well, does that mean that Mike Hilton's job is safe? Or does that mean, that they know who Mike Hilton is and they want to give somebody the opportunity to beat him out? I don't know. I tend to lean like, you've got a secondary that's full of young guys. They've been torched in your joint practices by virtually every beat report, based on the reports of basically every beat reporter of every team. The Dolphins secondary has had their hands full with the Bears receivers, with the Lions receivers. I'm not sure if we heard a lot of it with the Jaguars. It sounded like the defense actually did a decent job, had a couple of picks against Trevor Lawrence today in the practice. But I think you need veterans there. I think if you brought in Mike Hilton, if you're really serious about this room not being a disaster, like, I'm not saying that you don't give Jason Marshall, like, you used a pick on Jason Marshall, I think a 5th round pick on Jason Marshall. I think if Jason Marshall turns out to be a good nickel corner, then that's great. Jason Marshall is going to make this roster, and he's got an opportunity there. But I don't know if that just makes me want to cut Mike Hilton because we've got an injury to Ethan Bonner. Who else do you got there? You're going to keep Isaiah Johnson. You're going to keep Cam Smith. They're talking up Cam Smith like, I'm sorry, Cam.
Boy, that organization is fully in Cam
like,
Smith rehab mode this week.
They're talking up Cam Igbenogany like he's Sam Madison because he made one tackle on a 3rd and 1 in a preseason game against a backup Lions receiver.
The orders from the higher ups in that organization this week were clearly begin the Cam Igbenogany rehab project so that people don't mutiny when he makes the 53-man roster. It is very clear Cam Smith is going to be on that 53-man roster just based on the way they're talking about him this week. Like, they're not going to talk him up that way and then be like, we're going to let him go. No, he'll be there.
Ethan Bonner getting hurt, I think, gave Cam Smith his roster spot. Ethan Bonner's another guy. Is he going to be on IR designated to return? Are they going to use a roster spot on him? We don't know really what that injury looks like. How ready is he going to be? We'll stay in the secondary. What about the safety room? Ashton Davis, is he close to returning? Is he going to be out a few weeks? Is he, what do they do with him? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. And then obviously Minkah Fitzpatrick's on the roster and Iffy Melifon was on the roster. Ashton Davis, you have to assume is going to be on the roster. Whether or not he's healthy or it's an IR spot, you have to assume that he's probably there. And then, you got to assume that Dante Trader, because they used a draft pick on him. And so, how many guys do they keep in the secondary? Do they keep 10? Do they keep 11? Do they keep 9? I think they probably keep at least 10. And so what does that mean? Don't lose sight of special teams being an important piece of this. So if you're down to your 4th and 5th safety, are you more concerned about what that player looks like on defensive snaps, knowing that they might get a handful of snaps a game? Or are you more concerned with their role on special teams if they're a plus special teams player? And that's where guys like Dante Trader and Patrick McMorris, I think, make their hay and make this roster. And so, or even Elijah Campbell. What does that say about Elijah Campbell? Now, Elijah Campbell, is he made it expendable? Because even though he's been proven to be a pretty good special teams player, the fact that they've got younger players that are cheaper that can do the job, maybe that makes Elijah Campbell, the odd man out there in the safety room. I don't know. They're tough decisions to make. It's a funny situation because the Dolphins are, and we'll talk about, and we have talked about all training camp about this team not really having a lot of depth. And when we say that they don't have a lot of depth, what we mean is that they're an injury or two away at several different positions from being an absolute disaster on either offensive snaps or defensive snaps. But they have a bunch of guys that you could kind of make the case for that are deserving of roster spots. And there's actually a lot of competition for the last handful of roster spots. And it's made a lot more complicated with the injuries. If it was a very healthy team and a very healthy roster, I think you can make much more clearer delineations as far as this guy's a roster worthy player and this guy's not. But when you start talking about, do we burn a roster spot? Do we burn an IR spot on him? Is he going to be picked up by somebody else? If we don't put him on the 53, can we stash him on the practice squad? It becomes a little complicated.
Yeah, I think there is probably one room on the Dolphins team where they have guys that they're going to want to put on the, that they've got more depth than they know what to do with, and where they're going to want to have guys stashed on the practice squad so that they don't get, and hope that they don't get poached by other teams. And I think for me, that's clearly the wide receiver room. It feels like to me that they've got an abundance of talent there. As we've talked about before, it seems very clear to us that there is a pretty clear 6-man hierarchy of who the receivers are going to be that are going to make this team. But then you've got, and again, to recap, it's Hill, it's Waddle, it's Malik Washington, Taj Washington, Nick Westbrook-Ikini, and D. Eskridge. And I think of those 6, to me, Taj Brooks is probably at the 6, just because Eskridge has gotten a lot more run. Taj Washington is at the 6. D. Eskridge has gotten a lot more run in the special teams game. And so I feel like if they ended up only keeping 5, Taj is the guy that they want to try to find a way to hold on to on the practice squad. But they also have Theo Weiss, who is a guy that you're starting to see a lot of, and people are pretty high on Weiss as well. And, is he going to end up on the practice squad, or is he going to end up on somebody else's team? Now, that remains to be seen. And we'll see how things go when we get to the actual cut down next week. But I kind of have a take on cut down day and how teams cut down to get to 53. And then you have the teams that have to cut down to get to 53. And then you have teams that cut down even further and then are poaching guys off of other teams practice squads. And typically the teams that are cutting guys and not picking people up off of other people's practice squads, those are typically, not always, but typically those are the teams that are a little bit better. And the teams that are out there hunting for players that have been cut from other rosters and have made it onto other practice squads, those are the teams that are usually in the kind of bottom half of the league. And my gut tells me that the Dolphins are going to be in that latter category, looking at, some depth pieces on the defensive side, perhaps even in the running back room as well when we get to the end of the 53. But we'll talk more in depth about that on Monday. What we're going to do next is look ahead to this final preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But before we do that, I got to talk to you guys about Dolphins Talk Extra, because if you haven't signed up for Dolphins Talk Extra, you got about 2 weeks left to take advantage of our introductory discount for new subscribers. If you have not yet subscribed to Dolphins Talk Extra, if you join on that $3 tier from now until kickoff of the Dolphins game on September 7th, you can join for $1 at patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. Use the promo code DTX1. Once again, patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. Use the promo code DTX1 and you can join Dolphins Talk Extra for your first month for only a single $1. And for that single $1, you'll get access to our Discord. You'll get access to our season-long prediction games. I was going to say our fantasy football league, but it's actually completely full at this point. But we've got our pick'em games. We've got our survivor pools. We're going to have other games going on throughout the course of the season. You get extra podcasts. We're going to have a Dolphins Talk happy hour where we get together and everybody has a call-in show. Everybody can voice their opinions on the air with us. We'll probably also have have watch-alongs over the course of the season where you watch the game live along with us. Lots of good stuff over there at Dolphins Talk Extra. And again, from now until September 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern, you can join for $1 at patreon.com/DolphinsTalk using the promo code DTX1. Take advantage of it, folks, and join us over at Dolphins Talk Extra. All right. Preseason. Final game. Dolphins. Here we go. Dolphins, Jags. Sounds like the starters are going to get some run here. Now, it sounds like Tyreek Hill is continuing to deal with an oblique injury, so it doesn't sound like he is going to play, but it looks like we're going to get Tua, we're going to get Jaylen Waddle, we're going to get as many of the ones that are available to play getting some playing time on Saturday. So, Brain, what is it that you are hoping to see from the first unit in this game, knowing, of course, that Jacksonville has said that their starters are not going to play at all on Saturday?
Well, if Jacksonville's ones on defense aren't going to play and the Dolphins are going to start their ones, I want to see a crisp drive, and I'd like to see them finish it off with a touchdown. The game against Chicago, the starters got, and not all of the starters, but Tua played, and he played with Malik Washington and Taj Washington and Westbrook Akine, and he's played with the offensive line, and he played with Savon Ahmed, and it wasn't the prettiest of drives. They got to some third and even a fourth down play, but they converted and they got all the way down into the low red zone. They just couldn't finish it off, which was fine. But you'd like to see them finish it off. I think if they gave me the same kind of drive against Jacksonville's backup defense, but they finished it off with a touchdown, I'd feel pretty good about it. I'd like it to be a little bit more crisp. I'd like it to be, not as challenging. I don't think you want to be having to pick up fourth downs against and third and long situations against Jacksonville's backup defense. I'd like for you to have your way and just have like a really solid opening drive. You're going to script it, go down there, score a touchdown, instill confidence in the team and in your fan base that your offense is ready to go for the regular season, and then sit them down after one drive. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I liked what the ones did when they got their opportunity in Chicago, and I'd like to see them do the exact same thing, which is 3 and out, get some pressure on the quarterback, make a nice run stuff or two. Don't give up a big play in the secondary. Don't give up anything on like a 3rd and long. Just have a real solid possession. With the defense, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the ones play more than one series. But again, if Jacksonville's ones are only going to play one series, again, if it's like a 3 and out, throw them out there for another series. If they get 2 3 and outs in a row, all right, we've seen enough.
Yeah, I think that's it. I just want to see, and especially knowing that they're going up against backups, I want to see the starting unit on both sides of the ball play well, execute well, and the biggest thing is I want it to be clean, because that has been one of the bugaboos of this team for so long. Every year we see the same thing with Mike McDaniel's offense. It is such a finesse offense, and when this team cannot execute it cleanly, it's a mess out there. And it seems like the Dolphins, when they've got the full offense, when everybody is out there, and reports have said this as well, that when Tyreek Hill is out there with them, they look really good, but they don't look as good, as sharp, as clean when Hill is not out there. And so I want to see them execute clean and execute smart. That's the big thing. And then when it comes to the rest of the guys, I just want to see everybody go out there and give 110%, and let's see who pops. Let's see if we see some of those guys. Can we get a bounce back game from Derek McClendon, a guy who's, listen, his shots of making the 53 took a huge blow when they brought in Matthew Judon. So let's see what kind of reaction he has on Saturday. Can he bounce back? Eugene Asante, can he bounce back? Is there anybody? Let me see Cam Smith go out there and make some plays in this game and show us that you're actually a dude. Come on. Show me something one time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing that Cam Smith has going for him is he's got a much higher chance of making this roster than the other two guys that you mentioned. Derek McClendon had a real nice first preseason game. Second preseason game, not nearly as good. Got outplayed by Grayson Murphy, and then the fact that the Dolphins then went out and signed Matthew Judon. I don't see Derek McClendon making this roster. I mean, I think the Dolphins will keep 5 edge rushers. Maybe they keep a 6th. I think they probably keep 5. I think it's going to be 5 edge rushers, 5 interior defensive linemen, and I think they'll keep 15 between their edge, their interior defensive linemen, and their linebackers. I would not be surprised if they kept Channing Tindall as a 5th linebacker. I'm not saying that I think he's on the roster bubble. It's just a matter of his special teams. I think you're going to make a decision between who's the better special teams player, Channing Tindall or Cameron Good, which is ironic because if you remember back to that game against Buffalo a couple of years ago at the end of the season, the game that lost the Dolphins the division, it was Channing Tindall rolling up Cameron Good and ending Cameron Good's season. Who's at fault there? I don't know. But who's the better player now is what it comes down to. To me, Channing Tindall has more upside in what he can do on defensive snaps than what I've seen from Cameron Good. Because Cameron Good, even against backups, this guy is manhandled. He's not a speed rusher off the edge. He wins on the edge by setting the edge, but he doesn't set the edge because he's too small. Cameron Good is only a special teams player. To me, Channing Tindall is bigger, stronger, faster. I think I would not be surprised if Channing Tindall, if I was constructing the team, to me, Channing Tindall would be making the team over Cameron Good. But that's just me. But I think it's going to be either 5 or 6 edge rushers, 5 interior defensive linemen, and then 4 or 5 linebackers. And your interior defensive linemen. I think you're going to get you're going to get Sealer, you're going to get Benito Jones, and I think you're going to get the 3 rookies. That's your 5. I don't think there's another interior defensive lineman that makes this roster. I don't think Matthew Butler or Matt Dickerson have shown enough. What about the edge rushers? Is it McClendon? Is Grayson Murphy? Is Quentin Bell going to get some run? Is Mo Kamara, going to suit up and play? like I think they're going to keep at least 5. I would think that Quentin Bell, given what he did last season, probably has the inside track at being the 5th edge rusher. I don't know that they're going to keep a 6th. If they're going to keep a 6th, it's going to have to be a player that absolutely balls out. So is that going to be Grayson Murphy? Is it going to be Derek McClendon? I don't know.
Boy, there was no better example of being down bad as a Miami Dolphin fan than doing a player comparison between Cam Good and Channing Tindall in the year 2025.
We're talking about a 53-man roster. I'm literally talking about who's the 53rd man on the roster.
I know it just tells you how bad Channing Tindall has been as a draft pick that we're sitting there comparing him with Cameron Good in 2025. That we're comparing this guy that was taken. What round was he drafted in? Was he a 3rd round pick, Tindall?
He was a 3rd round pick, but he was a 3rd round comp pick. So he was not a top 100 pick. I think he was pick number 101.
He was a guy that I think all of us had very high hopes for, and he has just not delivered at all. So anyway, regardless, hopefully he comes through. I will say that this preseason, more so than any other preseason, he's at least made some plays and you've gone, hey, that's Channing Tindall. So, good for him. What about that guy? Anyway, that's going to wrap us up for this episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. We will be back on Monday giving you our 53-man roster predictions. And then after that, we are fully into season prediction mode. And I'll give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be coming your way with here in the weeks to come. We are going to be obviously 53-man roster predictions on Monday, and then we'll be on the DolphinsTalk.com roundtable show next Wednesday. There will not be a regularly scheduled episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show next Thursday because of the fact that we're on the roundtable, but we will have a show for Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers, Assad's Extra, coming your way. And then the following Monday, we will give you an optimistic take on the season. And we were going to do 2 separate shows, but because of where we're at time-wise, I think we're going to probably end up doing that Monday show before the season starts will be both an optimistic take for the season and a pessimistic take for the season. And then at the end, we'll tell you where we actually think the team is going to end up, or maybe we'll hold off on that and we'll do that on the Thursday show when we actually are previewing game 1 of the NFL season, when your Miami Dolphins travel to Indianapolis to take on Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts. Until then, head on over to patreon.com/DolphinsTalk and subscribe to Dolphins Talk Extra. Use the code DTX1 to get that first month for only $1. Subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you get your podcast. Visit DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. Make sure you go to caneswear.com for all your Miami Dolphins merch. And if you're a Dolphins Talk Extra subscriber, head on over to Patreon because we're about to do a bonus segment for you. For everybody else, take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins!
We're so down bad that we have people in the chat calling for this team to bring back Myles Gaskin and Savon Ahmed.